Hello, welcome to another video on our channel. Here, we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today, let's learn about the story of Elias Thornwell. He says he died and came back with a shocking warning about September 1st, 2024. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and city. Let us now listen to Elijah's testimony. My name is Elias Thornwell, and I'm here to share with you something that has completely changed my life, my worldview, and my understanding of what it means to be alive. I'm a simple man born and raised in Seabrook, a small coastal town in South Carolina. Since I was young, I've always been in love with the sea and everything it represents. This passion led me to pursue an unusual career. I restore old boats. I've never been a particularly spiritual or religious person. My faith was always more in the things I could touch, fix, transform with my own hands. The smell of freshly sanded wood, the sound of waves lapping against the hull of a boat, the feel of a well-balanced tool in my hands. These were the things that gave my existence meaning. My days were filled with work at the shipyard, dealing with the challenges of each unique project. Each boat that came to me had its own story, its own scars, and my job was to not just restore them, but to honor those stories, to preserve the essence of who they once were. I have a partner, Samantha Reed, who has been my rock for years. She understands my devotion to work and supports me unconditionally. We have a quiet life, without much fanfare or ambitions other than living well and doing a good job. I never imagined that something could shake the foundations of my reality so profoundly. After all, what could be more real than the work of my hands, the sweat of my face, the solidity of wood and metal? But life, as I came to discover, has surprising ways of showing us that there is more, much more, beyond what our eyes can see and our hands can touch. The story I'm about to tell is hard to believe. Sometimes, I myself still struggle to accept that all of this really happened. But it happened, and it changed everything. I ask that you listen to me with an open mind. What I experienced defies logic and reason, but it is as real as the ground beneath our feet. It's a journey that has taken me beyond the limits of life as we know it, and brought me back with a message that I believe is crucial for us all. Get ready for a story that challenges everything we think we know about life, death, and what may lie beyond. This is my near-death experience, a journey that began on an ordinary day at work and ended, well, actually, it never really ended. It was a day like any other at the shipyard. The summer sun was beating down, and the air was thick with the familiar smell of wood, paint, and salt water. I was working on an old fishing boat, a particular challenge that had consumed my days for the past few weeks. The vessel had been abused by the years and the sea, but I saw potential in it that others might not. I remember being completely absorbed in the work, my hands moving almost on their own as I sanded a particularly difficult section of the hull. Sweat was running down my face, and I could feel the heat of the sun on my back. It was one of those moments when the world around me seemed to disappear, and there was only me, the boat, and the task before me. That's when it happened. I felt a sharp sting on the back of my right leg. At the moment, I didn't pay much attention. After all, insect bites were common at the shipyard, especially at this time of year. I continued working, determined to finish what I was doing before taking a break. But something was wrong. Minutes after the bite, I began to feel a strange weakness spreading throughout my body. My movements, once precise and confident, became tentative and clumsy. I tried to shake the feeling off, thinking maybe it was just the tiredness or the heat getting to me. The weakness, however, only increased. My vision began to blur, the shapes and colors around me blending into a confusing blur. I tried to lean on the boat, but my legs no longer responded to my commands. A wave of panic hit me as I realized I was losing control of my own body. I tried to call for help, but my voice gave out. The world around me seemed to be spinning, and I felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit. The last thing I remember is the sound of my body collapsing against the wooden floor of the shipyard. And then, darkness. Complete and utter darkness, unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't like sleeping or passing out. It was as if I had been swallowed by the void, without any sense of time or space. I don't know how long I stayed in that state. It could have been seconds, minutes, or hours. But then, something changed. The darkness began to dissipate, giving way to a faint light. And with that light, came a feeling of floating. It was as if I was suspended in some kind of liquid, but without the wet or cold sensation we normally associate with water. It was at that moment that I realized I was no longer in my yard. In fact, I was nowhere that I could recognize or describe with words from our world. What I was about to experience would go beyond anything I could have imagined or believed possible. When the darkness completely dissipated, I found myself immersed in a scene that defies earthly description. It was like I was floating in a vast ocean, but not an ocean of water. This was an ocean of consciousness, of life, of souls. The vastness before me was both frightening and comforting. There was no horizon, no sky, no earth. Everything around me was an infinite expanse of this ocean. The colors were indescribable, changing and flowing in ways our physical eyes could never capture. It was as if each wave, each ripple of this ethereal sea, was composed of thousands, perhaps millions of lives. I could feel, not with my physical senses, but with something deeper, more fundamental, the presence of countless beings. They were souls, pure essences of existence, free from the limitations of flesh and time. Some seemed ancient, carrying wisdom I could barely comprehend. Others were young, full of vibrant energy and curiosity. The most surprising thing was that I didn't feel like a stranger in this place. Despite its alien nature, there was a deep familiarity, as if a part of me had always known and belonged to this realm. It was a feeling of being at home, but a home I didn't know I had. As I floated in this immensity, I began to realize that I could hear, although not with my ears, the thoughts and emotions of the souls around me. It was a silent cacophony of experiences, memories, and feelings. Stories of lives lived, loves lost and found, joys and sorrows, all blending into a cosmic symphony of existence. It was then that I noticed a presence approaching. It was different from other souls, more defined, more directed. As it approached, it took the form of a woman. She looked to be in her 50s, with wavy blonde hair that floated around her as if it were made of pure light. His deep blue eyes seemed to contain entire galaxies. She smiled at me, and in that smile I felt a peace that I had never experienced in my entire life. It was a smile that conveyed understanding, compassion, and wisdom beyond my comprehension. "You've arrived," she said, her voice echoing not in the air but directly in my mind. "I'm here to guide you." I tried to speak, but I realized I had no mouth, no physical body. Still, somehow, she understood me. "No words needed here. Elias," she continued. "Our thoughts are connected. You can call me Margot Winfield." Margot. The name resonated with me with an inexplicable familiarity. I had never seen her before, but I felt like I had known her for ages, like she was an old friend, a mentor, maybe even a part of myself that I had forgotten. "You have questions?" she said, not as a question but as an observation. "And I have a lot to show you. Are you ready for a journey beyond anything you've ever known?" Without words, just with the pure intention of my being, I answered yes. And so, guided by Margot, I began my journey through the layers of the spiritual world, a journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything in between and beyond. Margot, my guide in this realm beyond life, began to show me the different layers of the spiritual world. Each layer, she explained, has its own purpose, its own rules and lessons. The first layer we explored was a place of transition. Here, Newly arrived souls from the physical world adjusted to their new reality. I saw confused beings, some still trapped by the worries and fears of their earthly lives. Others looked relieved, as if they had finally left behind a great burden. Many stay here for a while, Margot explained, until they are ready to accept their new existence and move on. We then moved to a deeper layer. Here, the environment was more serene, more organized. I saw souls engaged in activities that seemed to be about learning and reflection. Some were reviewing the events of their past lives. Others seemed to be preparing for new journeys. "This is a place of growth and understanding," said Margot. "Here, souls learn the lessons they were unable to learn in physical life and prepare for future challenges." As we advanced, where all the wisdom of the universe seemed to be available to anyone who wanted to access it, one layer in particular caught my attention. It was a place of deep connection, where souls seemed to merge with one another, sharing experiences and understandings on a level I could barely comprehend. "Here," Margot explained, "the barriers between beings dissolve. It is a reminder of our fundamental unity, that we are all part of a greater whole." As we traveled through these layers, I began to understand that the spiritual world was not a static place, but a dynamic, ever-evolving realm. Souls moved between layers, learning, growing, and contributing to the ongoing expansion of universal consciousness. However, not all layers were of light and harmony. Margot showed me dark areas, places of conflict and confusion. "Even here," she said, "there are souls who struggle, who resist growth. But these struggles also have their purpose in the grand scheme of things." One of these darker layers impacted me deeply. It was a place of turbulent visions, where I could see conflicts and tensions growing between nations. Images of wars, natural disasters, and human suffering floated like dense fog in this realm. It was at this moment that a date appeared clearly in my mind. September 1st, 2024. The vision of this date was accompanied by a sense of urgency, of an imminent turning point. Margot noticed my uneasiness. "What you are seeing," she explained, her voice now carrying a seriousness it hadn't had before, "is a reflection of the choices and actions of the physical world. The day you saw September 1st, 2024, is a point decisions made by human beings to date will have a profound impact on the course of future events." The gravity of this revelation hit me full force. I was seeing not just the present and the past, but glimpses of possible futures. I felt the weight of responsibility. I had received knowledge that few had access to, and with this knowledge came the understanding that every decision made in the physical world had repercussions far beyond what we could imagine. "But remember, Elias," Margot continued, sensing my concern, "the future is not written in stone. It is fluid, shaped by each individual's choices and actions. What you have seen is a warning, not an inevitable fate." These words brought me a mixture of relief and apprehension. On the one hand, knowing that the future was not predetermined was comforting. On the other, the responsibility to act on this knowledge was overwhelming. "What should I do with this information?" I asked Margot, my thoughts a mixture of confusion and determination. She smiled, her gaze full of compassion. "Your journey here is not just to receive information, Elijah. It is to understand, on a deeper level, the interconnectedness of all things. The choices you make when you return will be guided by that understanding." We continue our journey through the layers of the spiritual world. Margot showed me healing places, where souls recovered from traumas experienced in physical existence. I saw fields of pure creation, where thoughts and intentions instantly manifested into forms of vibrant energy. In one of the last layers we visited, I experienced a sense of unity so profound that I almost lost my sense of individuality. It was as if I could feel the connection with every being, every particle in the universe. "This is the state of being that many seek to achieve," Margot explained, understanding the fundamental unity of all existence. "Carry this feeling with you, Elijah. It will guide you in moments of doubt." At the end of our journey, we returned to the ocean of souls where it all began. I felt transformed, as if I had lived 1,000 lives in an instant. The knowledge and experiences I gained seemed too vast to be contained in a single human mind. It was then that Margot asked me the question that would change everything. Now that you've seen all this, Elias, are you ready to make your choice? Margot's question hung in the air, loaded with meaning. What choice? I asked, even though on some deep level, I already knew the answer. The choice to return or stay, Margot replied, her voice gentle but firm. You can choose to remain here, in this realm of eternal peace and understanding, or you can choose to return to the physical world, carrying with you what you have learned here. The offer took me by surprise, although perhaps it shouldn't have. The peace I felt in this place was incomparable to anything I'd ever experienced. The idea of leaving behind all the worries and struggles of earthly life was tempting. Here, I could continue learning, growing, exploring the infinite layers of the spiritual world. But at the same time, something inside me was stirring. The images of future conflicts that I had glimpsed remained vivid in my mind. And then I thought about Samantha, about my work at the shipyard, about the people I knew and loved. I thought about the date, September 1st, 2024, and the role I could play in shaping the events leading up to it. It's not an easy decision, Margot said, reading my thoughts. Many, when they come here, choose to stay. The peace and understanding they find are hard to let go of. But some, those with an unfinished mission, choose to return. I knew she was right. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me wanted to stay, to dive deeper into this ocean of souls, to learn all the secrets of the universe. But another part, the part that had always dedicated itself to fixing broken things, felt there was more to be done. If I go back, I asked, not with words but with the pure intention of my being, will I remember all this? Margot smiled, a smile that seemed to contain all the wisdom in the universe. You will remember what you need to, she replied. Some things will become clear, others will be like distant dreams. But what really matters, what your soul has learned here, will remain with you, guiding your actions and decisions. I looked one last time at the vast ocean of souls around me. I felt the peace, love, and understanding that permeated this place. And then, with a certainty that came from the depths of my being, I made my choice. I need to go back, I said to Margot. These were not spoken words, but a clear and unshakable intention. She nodded, her smile now mixing pride and a hint of sadness. You chose a difficult path, Elijah, but it is the right path for you. Remember, even when you return to the physical world, you will never truly be separate from this place. It is a part of you, just as you are a part of it. With those words, I felt a change. The ocean of souls began to dissipate around me, the colors and shapes mixing in a swirl of light. The last thing I saw was Margot's face, her eyes full of love and encouragement. And so, I began my journey back to the world of the living, not knowing exactly what awaited me, but certain that nothing would be the same as before. The transition back into the physical world was an experience that defies adequate description. It wasn't smooth or gradual, as I might have expected. It was abrupt, disorienting, and, in some ways, violent. The first shock came with the realization that I wasn't simply waking up in my body. Instead, I found myself floating above him, in a state that I can only describe as that of a disembodied observer. Below me, I saw my own body lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses working frantically. The sound of the heart monitor, recording the irregular beats of my heart, echoed through the room. The voices of the medical team reached me with surprising clarity. We're losing him. Increase the voltage. Let's try one more time. Time of death. It was at that moment that panic took over me. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I had chosen to return. I had decided that I still had things to do in the world of the living. I remembered the date, September 1st, 2024, and the importance Margot had attached to it. It couldn't end like this. With all the strength of my will, I began to fight to return to my body. It was like swimming against a powerful current, each movement requiring immense effort. But I wouldn't give up. I couldn't give up. And then, in an instant, I felt a violent pull. It was as if the entire universe had been compressed into a single point and then exploded again. The pain was indescribable, as if every cell in my body was on fire. My eyes shot open, and I sat up in bed gasping for air. The nurses around me screamed in fright, not expecting such a sudden and vigorous movement from someone who, seconds before, was on the verge of death. "He's back!" I heard someone scream. "Call the doctor." I was back in my body, but something was wrong. My vision was blurred, full of lights and shadows that shouldn't be there. My limbs felt heavy, as if they didn't really belong to me. It was as if I was operating a complex machine and wasn't sure how all the controls worked. And strangest of all, I could still feel a part of me floating above, watching the scene. It was as if I was in two places at once, divided between the physical and spiritual worlds. As the doctors and nurses bustled around me, checking my vitals and asking questions I could barely process, I tried to get my bearings. The memories of my spiritual journey were still vivid, but they were beginning to blend with the reality around me in a confusing and disorienting way. I tried to talk, to tell them about Margot, about the ocean of souls, about the important date that was coming up. But my voice wouldn't come out. My throat was dry and sore, probably from the breathing tube that had been removed. A nurse leaned over me, her eyes full of concern and relief. "Mr. Thornwell, can you hear me? Everything is fine now. You had a severe allergic reaction, but we were able to stabilize you. Try to stay calm." Allergic reaction. This seemed so mundane compared to what I had experienced. I wanted to explain, to tell them that there was so much more going on, but the words wouldn't come. Little by little, the agitation in the room subsided. The doctors, satisfied that I was stable, began to leave. I was alone with a nurse who adjusted my IV and checked the monitors. It was then that I noticed something on the bedroom door. A familiar figure smiling at me. Margot. She didn't say anything, just nodded gently, as if to reassure me that everything would be okay. And then, in the blink of an eye, she disappeared. At that moment, I understood that my journey was far from over. In fact, she was just getting started. I had returned to the world of the living, but with one foot still firmly planted in the spiritual world. And with that return came the responsibility to use what I had learned to make the difference that only I could make. I closed my eyes, exhausted, but determined. The road ahead would be challenging, I knew. But I also knew I wasn't alone on this journey. With that comforting thought, I let sleep take me, knowing that when I woke up, a new life, a new mission awaited me. The days following my return were a confusing mix of medical tests, visits from worried family and friends, and a constant struggle to adapt to my new reality. Because even though I had returned to the world of the living, nothing was the same as before. The most disconcerting experience was the constant feeling of being partially out of my body. It was as if a part of me was still connected to that ocean of souls, refusing to completely anchor itself in the physical world. Sometimes I found myself observing my own body from above, as if I were an outside observer. Other times, my consciousness seemed to expand, allowing me to perceive things beyond the normal limits of my senses. The doctors couldn't explain what had happened to me. From their perspective, I had suffered a severe allergic reaction to an insect bite, which led to cardiac arrest. My quick and apparently complete recovery was a mystery to them. They ran numerous tests, but nothing indicated any brain damage or after effects from the near-death experience. What they couldn't see, what I could barely explain, were the profound changes that had occurred in me. My perception of the world around me had changed drastically. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds richer, and sometimes, when I looked at people, I could see something else. It wasn't an aura, not exactly. It was more like he could perceive layers of emotions and experiences that would normally remain hidden. Samantha was my pillar during this adaptation period. She noticed the changes in me, of course. How could I not notice? I was different. I spoke different. I acted different. But she never pressured me. Never demanded explanations that I wasn't ready to give. Your unconditional love and support were instrumental in my recovery. Elias, she said to me one day, holding my hand as we sat in the hospital garden, I don't know exactly what happened to you, but I know you came back different. And that's okay. I'm here for you, no matter what. Let it happen. His words touched me deeply. I wanted to tell her everything, share the wonders and terrors I had experienced. But how do I explain something that I myself was still struggling to understand? One of the most surprising experiences occurred about a week after I returned to the hospital. I was alone in the room, trying to process everything that had happened, when I saw my grandmother. Not a photo or a memory, but herself, standing at the foot of my bed, smiling at me with that loving smile that I remembered so well from my childhood. The initial shock was quickly replaced by a strange feeling of naturalness. After all, after what I had experienced, the visit from my grandmother's spirit didn't seem so extraordinary. "Grandfather?" I whispered, afraid that speaking louder would make her disappear. She smiled wider and nodded. She didn't speak, but somehow I could understand what she wanted. She was there to comfort me, to reassure me that I wasn't alone on this journey. And then, as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone, leaving behind only a feeling of peace and love. It was at that moment that I realized my near-death experience had not been the end of something, but the beginning. The veil between the worlds had become thin for me, allowing me to glimpse and interact with realities that were previously beyond my understanding. But with this gift also came a responsibility. I remembered the date, September 1st, 2024, and the importance Margot had attached to it. Something important was coming, something that could change the course of the future, and somehow, I knew I had a role to play in this. As the days passed, I gradually adapted to my new reality. Returning to my old surroundings was both a comfort and a challenge. Every corner of the house held memories, but now those memories were accompanied by perceptions and sensations I had never experienced before. As I settled into my favorite armchair, with Samantha by my side, feeling a rush of gratitude and love. "Yes," I replied, "I'm just readapting." And it was true. I was readapting not just to everyday life, but to a new way of seeing and experiencing the world. The question that continued to haunt me was, what should I do with this new knowledge, with these new skills? How could I use what I learned to make the difference Margot had suggested I could make? The answer, I realized, wouldn't come all at once. It would be revealed little by little as I continued my journey in this new life that I had been given. One thing was certain, nothing would be the same as before, and I was ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks have passed, my new reality has become, well, not exactly normal, but at least more manageable. I returned home, resumed my work at the shipyard, and in the eyes of the world, it seems that everything is back to normal. But of course nothing is normal. The experiences I had in the hospital, seeing my grandmother, perceiving things beyond the normal range of my senses, are not isolated events. They continue, and over time, I begin to understand better how they work. I have discovered that I can, to some extent, control when and how these experiences happen. It's like tuning a radio. With practice, I learned to tune in to different frequencies of the spiritual world. Sometimes they are just vague impressions, sensations of presences around me. Other times, they are clear visions and direct messages. One of these remarkable experiences occurred a few weeks ago. I was at the boatyard, working on an old fishing boat, when I felt that familiar feeling of dislocation. In the blink of an eye, I saw my grandmother again. This time, she was not alone. Beside him was a man I didn't immediately recognize, but who seemed strangely familiar. "Your grandfather," my grandmother said, without using words but communicating directly with my mind. "He left before you were born, but he was always watching over you." I stood frozen, staring at the man I only knew from old photos. He smiled at me, his eyes filled with a love and pride that moved me deeply. "When we have a message for you, Elijah," my grandmother continued. "It's about the work that lies ahead of you. What you saw and learned during your journey was no accident. You have an important role to play in the events that lie ahead." My grandfather nodded, and then spoke for the first time. "Remember the date, Elijah. September 1st, 2024. The choices you and others make between now and then will shape the future in ways you can barely imagine." I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. What exactly will happen on that date? What should I do? But before he could ask any questions, they began to fade away. "Trust yourself, Elijah," were my grandmother's last words before they disappeared completely. "You will know what to do when the time comes." I stood there, standing in the middle of the yard, holding a forgotten piece of sandpaper in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. It was confirmation that my near-death experience was not an isolated event, but the beginning of something much bigger. In the days and weeks that followed, the messages continued to arrive. They are not always so direct or dramatic. Sometimes they're just sudden intuitions, ideas that seem to come out of nowhere but that I know are important in some way. One of these intuitions led me to become more actively involved in local environmental issues. I began to notice patterns in the tides and marine life that others don't notice. It's like I can feel the pulse of the ocean, and that pulse tells me that something is wrong, that changes are coming faster than we imagine. Another message came through a vivid dream, so real that when I woke up, I could still smell ozone in the air. In the dream, I saw a storm brewing on the horizon, bigger and fiercer than anything we had ever seen. When I told Samantha about the dream, she looked at me with a mixture of concern and curiosity, her eyes full of determination. "Then we will prepare. Together." Her trust and support mean more to me than she can imagine, because as the messages and visions become more frequent and intense, I begin to feel the weight of responsibility that has been placed on my shoulders. It's not just warnings about the future that I receive. Sometimes they are messages from loved ones to people I barely know. Like the day when, while walking along the beach, I was approached by the spirit of a young sailor. He begged me to deliver a message to his mother, a woman who lives on the other side of town and whom I had never met. At first, I hesitated. How could I approach a stranger and tell her that her deceased son had sent me? But the urgency in the young spirit's voice was undeniable. I gathered my courage and went to the woman's house. To my surprise, she welcomed me with tears in her eyes, as if she already knew why I was there. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "My Tommy." I nodded, and then I gave her son's message, that he loved her, that he was at peace, and that she no longer needed to blame herself for the accident that took him. The gratitude in that woman's eyes showed me the power and responsibility that come with my new gift. It's not just about big upcoming events or important dates. It's about bringing comfort, healing and understanding to those around me. Now, just 4 days away from the fateful date, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible. Messages from beyond continue to arrive, increasingly clear and frequent. And with each new message, each new vision, I understand better the role I will have to play in the events to come. The date, September 1st, 2024, hangs on the horizon like a beacon, guiding my actions and decisions. I don't know exactly what will happen that day, but I know I need to be ready. Ready to face any challenge, ready to make the difference that only I can make. And so, with a heart full of determination and a mind open to messages from beyond, I continue my journey, knowing that each step takes me closer to my destination, whatever it may be. As the months have passed, the urgency of the messages I receive has increased. It's no longer just about occasional visions or subtle intuitions. It is as if the entire spiritual world is mobilizing, trying to communicate something of vital importance. The date, September 1st, 2024, is now etched in my mind like a mantra. Every time I think about her, I feel a shiver run down my spine. Whatever happens that day, I know it will be monumental. I have prepared myself the best way I can. First, I focused on honing my newfound skills. I spent hours meditating, learning to better control my out-of-body trips, and interpreting the messages I receive more clearly. Samantha, bless her heart, is by my side every step of the way. She doesn't fully understand what's happening to me, but her faith in me never wavers. Together, we began to make changes in our lives. We reduced our consumption, started stocking up on supplies, and I even started teaching basic survival classes to our neighbors. Some look at us as if we've gone crazy, but others seem to sense that something is in the air. The tension is palpable, not just in our small community but around the world. Global news seems to confirm my apprehensions. Conflicts are escalating in various parts of the world. The weather is increasingly erratic, with natural disasters occurring with alarming frequency. The global economy is unstable, with experts predicting an imminent recession. In the midst of all this, I continue my work at the shipyard. But now, every boat I restore seems to have a greater purpose. They are not just leisure or fishing vessels, but potential means of escape or survival. I have started equipping them with extra supplies and emergency equipment whenever their owners allow it. A few nights ago, I had a dream that changed everything. In it, I saw gigantic waves swallowing coastal cities, earthquakes ripping the land, and panicked crowds fleeing from something I couldn't see clearly. In the midst of the chaos, I saw a light, a beacon of hope. And somehow, I knew that I was the one who was supposed to guide people into that light. I woke up covered in sweat, my heart beating frantically. Samantha was awake next to me, her eyes full of concern. "What was it, Elijah? Another dream?" I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When I finally found my voice, the words came out in a hoarse whisper. "It's coming, Sam, and it's worse than we imagined." Since then, I have been planning more urgently. It's no longer just about our own survival, but about how we can help others. I talked to local leaders, trying to alert them to the need for preparation. Some listen to me, others dismiss me as a lunatic, but I can't give up. The visions and messages keep coming, more and more intense. Spirits of ancestors, spirit guides, and even entities I can't classify all seem to be trying to prepare me for what's to come. One of these entities, which presented itself as a keeper of time, gave me a particularly impactful insight. It showed me alternative timelines, possible futures that depend on the choices we make in the coming days. In some of these futures, humanity thrives, evolving into a higher state of consciousness. In others, chaos and destruction reign. The future is not written in stone, the Guardian told me, but there are inflection points, critical moments that can change everything. September 1st, 2024, is one of those moments. With this understanding, I intensified my efforts. I organized preparedness groups in our community. I teach survival techniques, first aid, and even some of the energy healing methods I learned on my spiritual journeys. Samantha, ever practical, is focused on ensuring we have enough supplies not only for ourselves, but to help others as well. She also began studying natural medicine and alternative healing techniques, feeling that these skills will be needed in the future. Now, just 4 days away from the date, the tension is palpable, not just in our little town, but all over the world. The news is full of reports of strange phenomena, unexplained lights in the sky, weather anomalies, even reports of mass spiritual experiences. It's like the veil between the worlds is getting thinner and thinner, allowing more people to experience what I went through. This brings both hope and fear. More people are open to hearing what I have to say, but panic is also starting to spread. Through it all, I hold on to hope and determination. I remember Margot's words, the feeling of unity I experienced in the ocean of souls. I know that no matter what comes, we are all connected. We are all part of something bigger. Today, August 28th, 2024, Samantha and I sat on the porch of our house, looking out to sea. The sunset paints the sky with surreal colors, as if the universe itself was giving us a sign. "Are we ready?" Samantha asks, her voice calm but with a hint of apprehension. I take his hand, feeling the strength and love that flow between us. "As ready as we can be," I reply. "Whatever happens in 4 days, we will face it together." As the sun disappears below the horizon, I close my eyes and send a silent prayer to the universe, for guidance, for strength, for hope. Because in 4 days, September 1st, 2024, the world as we know it will change forever, and I will be at the center of this change, ready to do my part, whatever that may be. Today is August 28th, 2024, and I'm sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset over the ocean. The colors are more vibrant than they've ever been, as if the sky itself is trying to tell us something. September 1st is just 4 days away, and the tension in the air is almost palpable. Over the past few days, the messages and visions have intensified in a way I have never experienced before. It is as if the veil between the worlds is becoming thinner and thinner, allowing information and energies to flow more freely. Last night I had a vision that left me sleepless. I saw the world as a cosmic chessboard, with invisible forces moving the pieces. In the center of the board there was a bright, pulsating light. I understood, in some way, that this light represented the collective consciousness of humanity, and she was about to take a quantum leap. I woke up from this vision with a clarity I never had before. I realized that what is coming is not just a catastrophe to be avoided, but an opportunity for transformation on a global scale. It's as if all of humanity is about to undergo its own collective near-death experience. This morning, I shared these ideas with Samantha. She listened to me intently, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and hope. "What can we do, Elijah?" she asked. "How can we prepare for something so immense?" I took her hands in mine, feeling the deep connection between us. "It's not just about fitness," I replied. "It's about spiritual and mental preparation. We need to be open to change, ready to embrace a new way of being." I spent the day today making final preparations. I checked our supplies, made sure our emergency communication systems were working, and made one last round of visits to our community members. But more important than any physical preparation is the internal work I'm doing. I spend hours meditating, trying to tune my consciousness to the frequency of what is to come. Sometimes I get glimpses of the future, some terrifying, others filled with a beauty and hope that leaves me speechless. Now, as the sun sets over the horizon, I feel a mix of emotions I can barely describe. Yes, there is fear of the unknown that awaits us. But there is also an expectation, a feeling of being on the cusp of something truly transformative. Samantha joins me on the porch, wrapping her arms around me. We were silent for a moment, taking in the beauty of the night sky. "Are we ready?" she asks finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I look into your eyes, seeing in them the reflection of all our hopes and fears. "As ready as we can be," I reply. "Whatever happens, we will face it together." As the first stars begin to appear in the sky, I send a silent prayer to the universe, for strength, for courage, for wisdom. Because in 4 days, the world as we know it will change forever. And I will be at the center of this change, ready to do my part, whatever that may be. Night falls, and with it comes a feeling of calm. Tomorrow will be another day of preparation, another day closer to the inevitable. But for now, in this moment, there is only peace, and the knowledge that, no matter what the future brings, we are all connected, all part of something bigger than ourselves. I close my eyes and take a deep breath, feeling the energy of the universe flowing through me. I'm ready. We are ready. The future awaits us, and together, we will welcome the unknown. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch every new video and help us spread this message to a wider audience. See you next time.